The arrival of the unknown the night was silent in the human colony. The stars above shined brightly, and the ground below was calm. Everyone in the colony was asleep, except for one young man named Daniel. He liked walking at night when no one was around. The cool air, the silence, and the endless stars made him feel alive. But that night, something strange happened. Daniel noticed a streak of light cutting across the sky. At first, he thought it was a shooting star. But then the light grew bigger, brighter, and slower. It was not a star, it was something else. His heart raced as the glowing object descended through the clouds. The earth shook when it landed outside. The colony walls, Neil froze. His mind screamed at him to run, but his legs refused to move. He had never seen anything like this before. The ground was cracked, and smoke rose from the place where the ship had landed. It was huge, dark, and shaped like nothing built by human hands. The colony alarms did not go off. Nobody else had seen it. Daniel was the only one standing there, staring at the unknown. With slow steps, the ship's hatch opened. A line of figures walked out. Their armor glowed faintly under the moonlight, and their weapons looked deadly. They were taller than humans, their movements sharp and disciplined. Daniel held his breath. Aliens, he had read about them in reports, but no human had ever stood so close. His body trembled. He wanted to run back to the colony, warn everyone, but curiosity rooted him to the ground. Then, from the center of the group, another figure appeared. Unlike the others, this one moved with grace. She wore shining armor that looked more elegant than the heavy gear of her guards. She walked slowly, with authority, as if the ground itself respected her. Her helmet hid her face, but Daniel could not look away. His heart beat faster with every step she took. The soldiers around her stood straight, like shadows protecting a flame. Finally, she stopped a few feet away from him. The air grew tense. Daniel swallowed hard, unsure if she even knew he was there. But then she raised her hands and pressed the sides of her helmet. With a slow hiss, the helmet unlocked. The metal plates slid apart, revealing her face. Daniel's eyes widened. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly under the starlight. Her eyes were large, a deep violet that shimmered like jewels. Her hair, long and smooth, flowed like liquid light down her shoulders. Every detail of her face was flawless, sharp yet delicate, strong yet beautiful. She did not look human, but she looked more beautiful than any human Daniel had ever seen. Without thinking, words escaped his lips. "Gorgeous," he whispered. The alien princess turned her eyes toward him. For the first time, Daniel realized. She had noticed him all along. Her gaze locked onto his, sharp and piercing, yet strangely calm. The soldiers moved quickly, pointing their weapons at him. Daniel's heart stopped. He raised his hands, his whole body shaking. He thought this was the end. But then something unexpected happened. The princess raised her hand and the soldiers froze. She gave them a command in a language Daniel could not understand. Slowly, the weapons lowered. Then she took a step toward him. Daniel's breath caught. In his throat, she was coming closer. Every instinct told him to run, but his feet remained planted in the dirt. His eyes stayed on hers, and her strange violet gaze did not break away. The distance between them shrank until Daniel could see the fine details of her glowing skin. He had never felt so small, so weak, and yet so drawn to someone. She stopped. Right in front of him, so close he could hear the faint sound of her breathing. Daniel wanted to speak, to say something more, but his voice failed him. He could only stand there, lost in her presence. The alien princess tilted her head slightly, studying him like a puzzle. For a moment, the world around them went silent. The soldiers, the ship, the stars, everything faded. It was only the human. And the princess. And then, just as Daniel thought she might speak, the night air filled with a strange hum. The ship behind her lit up with energy, and the ground shook again. Daniel's heart pounded. Something bigger was coming. But what? The forbidden encounter. Daniel could not move. The alien princess stood in front of him, her violet eyes glowing softly in the dark. She had stopped her guards from attacking him, but the silence between them felt heavy, almost dangerous. The ground still vibrated from the ship behind her, and Daniel's chest tightened as he realized how close he was to something humans had feared for centuries. The princess blinked slowly, studying him like he was a rare creature. Daniel's throat was dry. He wanted to speak, but no words came. She did not look angry, nor did she look afraid. Instead, there was curiosity in her eyes, as if she wanted to understand why a lone human stood in the shadows watching her. Her guards shifted, restless. One of them raised his weapon again, ready to fire. But the princess lifted her hand, stopping him without even looking. Her authority was absolute. Daniel's legs trembled, but he forced himself to stay calm. I didn't mean to. His voice cracked. He swallowed hard. I didn't mean to watch. I was just. The princess tilted her head, her silver hair catching the light of the stars. Then, to Daniel's shock, her lips moved. A soft sound came out. The language was strange, filled with tones he had never heard before. It was not English, not anything human. Daniel shook his head slowly. I don't understand. For the first time, a small change came over her face. She narrowed her eyes, as if frustrated, then spoke again, slower this time. Still, it was alien. Still, it was impossible for him to understand. Daniel sighed, his voice low. You're a princess, aren't you? He wasn't sure why he said it, but the way her soldiers obeyed her, the way she carried herself, but was clear. She was not just another alien soldier. She was someone higher, someone powerful. The princess didn't answer, but the faintest flicker of recognition passed over her expression. Then she did something none of the guards expected. She took another step toward him. Daniel's heart raced. She was only inches away now. The scent of her armor-sharp metal mixed with something floral reached his nose. Her glowing skin reflected the faint moonlight, making her look almost unreal. Daniel's voice cracked again as he whispered, Why? Why are you here? She stared at him in silence, her violet eyes unblinking. Then, very slowly, she reached out her hand. Daniel froze. The soldiers stiffened, ready to strike if he moved wrong. But Daniel couldn't stop staring at her hand. It was delicate, glowing faintly like her skin, with long, slender fingers. She extended it toward his chest, stopping just before touching him. His breath caught. Her hand hovered over his heart. Daniel could feel the warmth radiating from it. For one terrifying second, he thought she might strike him down. Instead, she simply held it there, as if listening. Her lips parted. A single word escaped. Broken, strained. But this time, Daniel understood. Human. The sound of it sent chills down his spine. She had spoken his language. Not perfectly. Not smoothly, but enough to shake him. Yes, Daniel whispered, almost breathless. Human. I'm human. Her eyes softened. It was only for a second, but he saw it the same way a person looks at something fragile. Something rare. The moment broke when one of the guards shouted something harsh in their alien tongue. The princess's head snapped toward him. The soldier barked again, pointing his weapon at Daniel. Daniel's blood ran cold. He knew what this meant. They had seen enough. To them, he was a threat, a spy, maybe even an enemy. But before the soldier could fire, the princess raised her voice. Her tone was sharp, commanding. The soldier immediately stopped, lowering his weapon, but glaring at Daniel with hate. Daniel stumbled back a step, his chest rising and falling rapidly. He had no idea what had just happened, but one thing was clear. The princess had protected him. Why? Before he could make sense of it, she turned her head slightly, looking back at him. Her gaze lingered for a moment longer, then she made a soft gesture with her hand, most like a warning. Stay silent. Stay hidden. Then, without another word, she turned and walked back toward her ship. The soldiers followed her, forming a wall of armored bodies around her. The hatch of the ship opened, and one by one, they stepped inside. Daniel stood there in shock, his legs shaking. His breath was still unsteady, his heart still racing. She had spoken to him. She had spared him, and she had touched the air above. His heart, like she was listening for something inside him. As the ship's hatch closed and the hum of its engines filled the night, Daniel whispered to himself, "Why me?" But deep inside, he already knew the truth. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. And whatever reason the alien princess had for approaching him, it would change his life forever. Secrets under the stars. Daniel could not sleep that night. His mind replayed the moment again, and again the alien princess removing her helmet. Her violet eyes meeting his, her hand hovering above his heart, and the single word she had spoken, human. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his chest still pounding. Why had she spared him? Why had she come so close, as if she wanted to understand him? None of it made sense. She could have ordered his death, yet she had stopped her soldiers. Instead, she looked at him as though he mattered. The colony remained quiet. No alarms, no sirens. Nobody else had seen the landing. Daniel almost wondered if it had been a dream. But when he stepped outside again, he saw the faint scorch marks. In the dirt, proof that the alien ship had been real. The night air was cold. He pulled his jacket tighter and walked slowly toward the field where the ship had landed. The stars above shimmered, silent witnesses to the mystery. The ground was still warm, and the strange marks glowed faintly where the ship had touched. Daniel's heart thumped faster. Something inside him told him that it was not over. Dar's past. The colony slept, yet Daniel stayed outside, staring at the sky. And then he saw it. A shadow moved near the trees. He crouched quickly, hiding behind a broken fence. His breath caught when the figure stepped out of the shadows. Silver hair, glowing skin, violet eyes. The alien princess, she was alone. No soldiers, no guards, just her. She moved carefully, glancing around as if making sure no one followed. For a moment, Daniel thought she had come to hunt him down. But then their eyes met again, and instead of fear, he saw curiosity. Neil stood slowly, his heart racing. "You," he whispered. The princess tilted her head, studying him in silence. She took a few slow steps closer. Her armor reflected the starlight, but her face was softer now, less guarded. Daniel's mouth was dry. He forced out words. "Why are you here?" She didn't answer, not directly. Instead, she pressed her hand to her chest, then pointed to him. Her voice was low, broken, her English imperfect. "Talk, human." Daniel blinked. She wanted to talk. His throat tightened. You speak my language." Her lips curved. Slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Learn, little." Daniel's pulse quickened. She must have studied human speech, even if only a little. Enough to try. Enough to reach out. He nodded slowly. Then, talk. She looked up at the stars, her eyes distant. When she spoke, her words were broken, but Daniel understood enough. War, no end. Tired, her voice was heavy with sadness. She lowered her eyes to him again. You? Different. Daniel's chest tightened. She was a princess, born into power, surrounded by war. Yet here she was, sneaking out at night to speak to a simple human. He stepped closer, careful not to frighten her guards if they were nearby. Different how? He asked softly. She paused, searching for words. Her hand moved again to his chest, just above his heart. Feel strong, but kind. Daniel swallowed hard. Her words shook him. She saw something in him he never thought anyone, especially an alien, would notice. The princess lowered her hand slowly. She looked almost vulnerable. For the first time, Daniel saw her not as an untouchable leader, but as someone trapped, longing for freedom. She was tired of war, tired of commands, tired of pretending. A silence grew between them. Above, the stars shimmered, endless. An eternal. Daniel whispered, "Do your people know you're here?" She shook her head firmly. Danger? If no, kill. His eyes widened. They would kill you. She looked away. Princess, no free, always watched. Daniel felt a surge of anger at her words. Even she, with all her power, was a prisoner in her own world. He took a step closer, lowering his voice. Then, why risk coming here? Her eyes returned to his. For the first time, there was fire in them. Because, human, not fear me. Humans say, gorgeous. Daniel's face turned red. He had whispered it without thinking, but she had heard it. She remembered it. I didn't mean, but she raised her hand gently, silencing him. Truth, she said softly. I see. Truth. Daniel's chest tightened again. She wasn't angry. She wasn't mocking him. She had taken his words as something real. Something no one else had ever dared say to her. The silence stretched again, heavier now, but warmer. The stars above seemed brighter, and for the first time, Daniel didn't feel fear. He felt something else, a fragile connection forming between two worlds that should never meet. Then, in the distance, a sound broke the night. A harsh, metallic echo. The princess stiffened. She turned sharply, her eyes scanning the trees. Her guards were searching for her. She looked back at Daniel, her expression urgent. She whispered a single word, hide. Before he could reply, she turned and disappeared into the darkness, her glowing figure vanishing among the trees. Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding. He had just shared words with an alien princess under the stars. She had spoken of war, of chains, of truth. She had trusted him, even for a moment. But now, he knew something dangerous. Her people discovered their meeting. They would kill them both. Daniel looked up at the endless sky, whispering to himself, this is only the beginning. The bond that shouldn't exist the following nights were never the same for Daniel. Every time he looked at the stars, he wondered if she was out there watching him too. The alien princess had risked her life just to speak with him. She had whispered truths that no one else in her empire dared say. And she had remembered his word, gorgeous. Daniel could not stop thinking about her violet eyes and the sadness hidden inside them. Days passed quietly in the human colony. People worked, traded, and lived as if nothing unusual had happened. But Daniel carried a secret that burned inside him. No one knew that he had seen the princess. No one knew that she had spoken to him at night. He often returned to the same place where they had met. And sometimes, when the colony was deep in sleep, she came. The meetings were brief, stolen moments under the stars. She always came alone, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. Daniel noticed how she always looked over her shoulder, afraid of being followed. She was not free, not even as a princess. At first, their conversations were broken. Her English was limited, and Daniel struggled to understand her alien tongue. But slowly, with gestures and patience, they began to share stories. Daniel told her about Earth. He spoke of oceans so wide you could not see the end. A forest filled with life, and of music that touched the soul. She listened in silence, her eyes wide with wonder. In return, she spoke of her world. A planet covered in crystal towers where the sky shimmered green and gold. But her words grew bitter when she described her palace. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also a cage. She had been raised not as a child, but as a weapon for her people's wars. Daniel saw the pain in her voice. "You never wanted war," he whispered. She shook her head. "Wanted freedom." That word hung in the air. Freedom, they sat in. Silence for a while, the stars shining above them. Daniel realized something that both frightened and amazed him. She trusted him. Out of all the beings in the galaxy, she chose to share her truth with a simple human. One night, their meeting lasted longer than usual. She had removed parts of her heavy armor, setting them down on the grass. For the first time, Daniel saw her not as a warrior or a princess, but as someone vulnerable. Her skin shimmered under the moonlight, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked at him quietly. Then she asked, in slow and careful English, "Why you? Not fear me?" Daniel froze at the question. His heart raced. He could have told her the truth that at first he had been terrified, that he had nearly run when her soldiers raised their weapons. But instead, he looked into her eyes and spoke softly. "Because you don't look at me like an enemy." Her violet eyes softened. She seemed to think about his words for a long moment. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "You see me." Daniel felt warmth rise in his chest. He nodded. "Yes, I see you." Their bond grew with each secret meeting. A human and an alien princess speaking under the stars, bound by something. Neither of them fully understood, but shadows were never far away. One night, as Daniel waited in the usual spot, he heard footsteps in the distance. At first, he thought it was her. But when he looked closer, his stomach tightened. It wasn't her. It was one of her guards. The armored soldier scanned the area, his weapon glowing faintly in the dark. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. If the soldier found him there, everything would be over. He crouched low, hiding behind the tall grass. The soldier muttered something in their alien tongue, then walked away slowly. Moments later, the princess appeared, her eyes sharp with worry. "Danger," she whispered quickly. "They suspect." Daniel's chest tightened. "Suspect us?" She nodded, her voice low. "If they know, both die." The words cut deep. Daniel realized how fragile their bond truly was. They were walking on a knife's edge. One wrong step, one witness, and everything would end in blood. But even then, he couldn't bring himself to stop. He looked at her, his voice firm. "Then we'll be careful, but I won't walk away." Her eyes widened at his words. For the first time, Daniel saw her lips curve into a faint smile, but real, "You." "Stubborn human," she whispered. They shared a brief laugh. Tension easing for a moment. But in the distance, the sound of the alien ship's engines echoed faintly, reminding them of the danger that surrounded their fragile bond. Daniel knew their connection should not exist. A human and an alien princess enemies. By birth, separated. By war. Yet when she looked at him with those violet eyes, he no longer cared about what should or should not be. He only knew one thing. This bond was real, and it was worth the risk. The choice between two worlds, the days in the human colony grew uneasy. Rumors spread quietly. Some farmers claimed they had seen strange lights at night, and others swore they had heard metallic sounds from the forest. The colony leaders dismissed these whispers as fear, but Daniel knew the truth. The aliens were here, and worse, War was coming. Daniel noticed the tension in the princess each time they met under the stars. She spoke less, her violet eyes shadowed with worry. Her words in broken English carried a weight that pressed on his chest. One night, as they sat in silence, she finally said it. Soon, war. My people. Prepare. Daniel's stomach twisted. He already feared this, but hearing it from her lips made it real. He leaned closer. But you don't want war. You told me. She nodded, her face hard. Don't want, but. No choice. Princess must obey. The words struck him like a blade. She was torn caught between her heart and her throne. Her people saw her as a weapon, a leader of battle, but Daniel saw her as someone longing to be free. He clenched his fists. There's always a choice. Her eyes snapped to his, sharp and pained. Choice means betray people. Daniel's voice dropped low. And not choosing means killing mine. Silence fell. The truth lay heavy between them. The princess looked away, staring at the stars as if they held an answer. Her silver hair shimmered, and for a moment, she looked fragile, almost broken. Two worlds, she whispered. One heart cannot have both. Daniel wanted to reach for her hand, but he didn't dare. He knew her guards could be watching from the shadows. Instead, he spoke softly. Then, follow your heart. Her lips trembled, as though she wanted to believe him, but couldn't. Heart is weak. Throne is strong. Daniel shook his head. No, heart is stronger. Stronger than war, stronger than fear. For a brief second, she met his gaze, and he saw something flicker in her eyes' hope. But then, the sound of heavy footsteps broke the moment. Her guards were near. She stood quickly, pulling her armor back around her shoulders. Her face turned cold, the mask of a princess once again. Before leaving, she whispered one last word. Careful. And then she was gone. The next morning, Daniel woke to alarms in the colony. Soldiers rushed through the streets carrying rifles. The leaders shouted orders, calling everyone to the main square. Daniel's chest grew tight as he joined the crowd. The commander's voice was grim. Scouts report alien fleets in orbit. We must prepare for attack. Gasps spread through the people. Mothers held their children close. Men clenched their fists in fear. Daniel's eyes darted to the sky. Somewhere up there, she was preparing too, but not as his friend. As a princess of the enemy, that night, Daniel returned to the meeting place, unsure if she would come. Hours passed, and just when he thought she had chosen her world over him, he saw her. She stepped out of the shadows, her face pale, her eyes filled with conflict. She looked at him for a long time before speaking. They order me. Lead attack. Daniel's heart sank. He had known it, but hearing it shattered him. You can't, he whispered urgently. If you lead, my people will die. Families, children. Her voice shook. If refuse, I die. My people call me traitor. Daniel stepped closer, desperate. Then die for what's right. Don't kill for what's wrong. Tears glistened in her violet eyes, though she tried to hide them. She pressed her hand against his chest again, over his heart, trembling. You ask? Too much, she whispered. Daniel's own voice cracked. I ask you to be free. Not their weapon, not their prisoner. Just you. Her lips parted, but no words came. She pulled her hand away and turned sharply, as if afraid of her own feelings. Tomorrow, war begins, she said. Her voice was hollow. I must choose. Daniel's chest burned. He wanted to grab her hand, beg her not to leave, but he could see the storm inside her. If he pushed too hard, she might break, so he whispered instead. Then choose peace. Choose your heart. Choose us. She froze for a moment, her back to him. The night air carried the sound of her breathing, quick and uneven. Finally, she looked over her shoulder, her violet eyes glimmering with pain, and then, without another word, she vanished into the shadows. Daniel stood alone under the stars, his fists shaking. Tomorrow, everything would change. Would she betray her people for him, or would she betray him for her people? The question tore at his soul. The princess stood between two worlds, and Daniel knew that her choice would decide the fate of both. The betrayal and the escape. The morning came with fire in the sky. Daniel woke to the sound of sirens echoing through the colony. Soldiers shouted orders, families ran for cover, and the air shook with the roar of alien ships descending from above. The war had begun. Daniel's chest tightened as he rushed outside. The colony's defenses fired bright beams into the sky, but the alien fleet was larger and stronger. Explosions lit the horizon. He could see their massive ships casting shadows over the land, and at the front of it all, he imagined her the princess. She had told him she would lead the attack. She had told him war was coming. Now, Daniel's heart pounded with fear. Had she chosen her throne over her heart? The battle raged. Alien soldiers stormed the outskirts of the colony, their weapons glowing as they clashed with human defenses. Smoke filled the air, cries of fear rose, and the world seemed to crumble around Daniel. He ducked behind a broken wall as blasts shook the ground. But in the chaos, he saw something strange. One squad of alien soldiers moved differently. They didn't strike directly at humans, they fired into the air, missing their targets on purpose. Their leader barked false orders, pushing humans towards safer ground instead of traps, and at the center of them, he saw her. The princess. His heart leaped. She was here, and she wasn't leading the slaughter. She was protecting humans in secret. Daniel's breath caught as their eyes met across the battlefield. Even in the chaos, even with fire and smoke between them, he knew she saw him. For a brief moment, she raised her hand small, almost invisible to her guards, but enough for him to understand she had chosen. Not her people, not her throne, him. But her betrayal would not stay hidden for long. One of her guards shouted angrily in their alien tongue, pointing at her strange movements. Suspicion filled the squad. The princess's jaw tightened. She barked back orders, pretending to stay in command. But Daniel could see the storm behind her eyes, and then it happened. An alien soldier broke from the ranks, aiming his weapon not at humans, but at her. Daniel's heart froze. No. He shouted. The assassin fired. The princess spun, her armor catching part of the blast, but the force sent her crashing to the ground. The guard raised his weapon again, ready to finish her. Daniel's legs moved before his mind did. He sprinted across the battlefield, ignoring the blasts and shouts around him. He reached her just as the assassin aimed. With all his strength, Daniel tackled the soldier, knocking the weapon aside. The alien roared, slamming him to the ground. Daniel's vision blurred as pain shot through his ribs. The soldier lifted his blade, but before it could strike, violet light flashed. The princess had risen. Her own weapon pierced through the guard, dropping him instantly. Breathless, Daniel stared up at her. She was hurt, armor scorched, but her eyes burned with fire. She extended her hand and pulled him to his feet. "Run," she ordered, her voice sharp. Now, together, they fled through the burning colony. Alarms blared, human soldiers shouted. Alien squads chased. They ducked into the ruins of a collapsed building, catching their breath. Daniel grabbed her arm, his voice shaking. "You saved me, but now your people will hunt you too." She met his eyes, her voice heavy. "Yes, I betray throne. No return." The weight of her words hit him hard. She had given up everything, her crown, her safety, her people, all for one choice. Him, Daniel's chest ached. Then we escape. Together. Her violet eyes softened for the briefest moment, then hardened again as footsteps thundered outside. Her guards shouted her name, searching the ruins. Daniel's hand tightened around hers. This way. They slipped through the shadows, dodging patrols, moving deeper into the wreckage of the battlefield. Every corner carried danger. Every second. Felt like borrowed time, but for the first time, they weren't enemies. They were running side by side. As night fell, they reached the edge of the forest. The colony still burned in the distance, smoke rising like a dark storm. Alien ships hovered above, scanning for survivors. The princess stumbled, her wounds slowing her down. Daniel caught her before she fell. His heart pounded. "You can't stop now. Stay with me." Her voice was faint. Daniel. It was the first time she had spoken his name. His chest tightened, but before he could answer, the forest lit up with searchlights. Alien drones hovered above, scanning. The princess grabbed his arm, her strength returning for one last push. "We run, or we die." Daniel nodded, his grip firm. "Then we run." And together, under the cold starlight, they disappeared in two. The forest, two fugitives, hunted by an empire. Bound by a bond that should not exist. Behind them, the alien fleet tightened its grip. Orders spread quickly. The princess had betrayed her people. She was no longer their leader. She was their enemy. The hunt had begun, and Daniel knew their fight was far from over. A new dawn. Together, the forest was dark, but the sound of pursuit was never far. Daniel and the alien princess ran through the shadows, their breaths heavy, their legs burning. Behind them, drones buzzed in the sky, and alien voices shouted through the trees. Every step felt like the last, yet they refused to stop. The princess's wounds slowed her, but Daniel kept her steady. "Just a little more," he whispered, though he had no idea where safety lay. All he knew was that stopping meant capture. Death, the princess's violet eyes glowed faintly in the night. She said nothing, but her grip on his arm was strong. She had chosen this path, chosen him, and now they were bound by that choice. At last, they reached the edge of a valley. A river shimmered in the moonlight below, cutting through the land like a silver blade. Daniel helped her down the slope, and for a moment, the chase faded behind them. They stopped by the riverbank, gasping for air. Daniel looked at her closely, worried. Her armor was cracked, her silver hair matted with dirt and blood, but her gaze remained fierce. "You can't keep running like this," Daniel said softly. She shook her head stubbornly. "No, stop. Must live." Together, the word together struck him deep. He nodded firmly. "Then we'll find a way." The night passed. Slowly, they hid under the roots of an old tree, listening to the hum of alien ships above. Daniel could barely close his eyes, but exhaustion finally pulled him into brief sleep. When dawn came, he awoke to find her sitting quietly, watching the sunrise. Her face glowed in the soft light, her eyes reflecting shades of gold and violet. For a moment, Daniel forgot the war, the danger, the fear. She looked almost free. He sat up slowly. "What are you thinking?" Her voice was low, almost like a prayer. First time, see sun. Without walls, without chains. Daniel's chest tightened. She had been born to a throne, but never to freedom. She had lived her whole life under duty and control. Only now, hunted and broken, did she taste what it meant to choose her own path? She turned to him, her eyes soft. "Daniel, you save me. Not just life. Save me." His throat tightened. Words felt too small, too weak, but he whispered, "And you saved me too." For a moment, they simply sat there in silence, watching the sun rise over a world that was still burning. But peace never lasted long. A sudden blast tore through the trees. Shaking the ground, Daniel's heart jumped. Alien soldiers were closing. In their weapons glowed as they spread through the valley. The princess stood, her body trembling, but her voice sharp. "No more run. We fight." Daniel swallowed hard. Fight them. There's too many. Her eyes burned with fire. Not fight to win. Fight to live. Daniel clenched his fists. He couldn't let her stand alone. Then we fight together. The soldiers emerged from the shadows, weapons aimed. The princess raised her blade, her body weak, but her spirit unbroken. Daniel picked up a fallen metal rod from the ground, his only weapon, and stood beside her. The aliens shouted, demanding her surrender. She answered with silence. Then, before the battle could begin, the sky roared. A human dropship swept low over the valley, its cannons firing bright blasts. The alien soldiers scattered, shouting in alarm. Daniel shielded his eyes as the ship descended, its hatch opening wide. Human soldiers rushed out, pulling Daniel and the princess toward safety. "Move!" one shouted. Daniel hesitated, looking at her. Would she go? Would humans even accept her? She looked at him, then at the humans, her jaw tight. This was her moment, the final choice. Slowly, she stepped onto the dropship beside him. Inside, the humans aimed their weapons at her nervously. Daniel raised his hands quickly. "She's with me. She's not the enemy. She helped us." The soldiers exchanged doubtful looks, but lowered their weapons slightly. The princess stayed silent, her eyes locked on Daniel, trusting only him, as the dropship lifted into the sky. The colony below burned, but hope flickered in Daniel's chest. They had escaped, for now. Later, as the ship carried them away, the princess removed what remained of her helmet and set it aside. Her silver hair glowed in the sunlight, and her violet eyes softened as she looked at him. For the first time, she smiled, not faintly, not briefly, but fully. Daniel's breath caught. She wasn't a princess anymore. She wasn't a soldier, or a prisoner, or an enemy. She was simply herself, and he whispered again, the same word he had spoken the night he first saw her. Gorgeous. This time, she did not look away. She closed her eyes, leaned forward, and pressed her forehead lightly against his. The sun rose higher, spilling golden light across their faces. Two worlds had tried to tear them apart. Two empires had demanded their loyalty. But in the end, they chose each other together, and with that choice, a new dawn began.